Welcome to another installment of This Is Not Normal on the Political Drain podcast with Drill Sergeant Doug, aka Admin Doug, a U.S. Army veteran, teacher, musician, and family man from Jamaica, now fights for justice and democracy through commentary and humor. Follow him on YouTube at Political Drain and at Sons of Liberty Official as Drill Sergeant, aka Admin Doug, continues to protect our freedoms.
I've been very clear about this with Democrats up and down the ticket, doesn't matter the race. If you think that you're going to win your race with rose-colored glasses on and everything's just going to be PC and civil, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
If you think that you're going to win your race by playing with the same traditional rule book that you've always been playing, I'm here to tell you the other side has already gotten a copy of that playbook. They've mastered the plays, they've known how to beat those plays, and you will lose.
Yep.
That's the truth.
What's up, YouTube? Drill Sergeant here, and we got someone very special. I want to introduce you to a veteran, an attorney, and a defender of democracy. We've done a few politicians so far, a few people running for candidacy. This one, guys, I really want you to pay attention to. Jordan J. Herrera from the 5th District of Missouri. What's going on, my friend? 5th Congressional District. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Doug. How are you today? And thank you for that introduction.
I wanted to start this off with the story. You've told me your story. We've talked before, but I want to give you the chance to say who you are. Why would someone vote for you? What's your story? What's your mission here?
Yeah, no, I think the mission is the right place to start. Speaking about our mission kind of is the right place to begin also because it's where our call to action comes from. So before I joined the military and growing up in Nebraska, I was born on a tiny little town in the heartland of Nebraska called Sidney, Nebraska. It's a small town where there's more corn and cows than there are people. So in my hometown, people who looked and, sounded like I did with last names like Herrera, Hernandez, we were always isolated as the target. Now, I think that kind of will give you an indication of the home life I was growing up in. So my father was a German and my mother is Mexican and Spanish. And they were young. They had 3 children before the age of 25. And neither parent ever was given the example of how to be a successful parent themselves.
Yeah.
On my mother's side, her husband, my grandma Jenny, her husband was killed in Operation Jack Stay, 1966 during Vietnam. And on my father's side, my grandma Susie, unfortunately, in her marriage, he had left her early in their marriage for another woman, and she never really quite recovered from it. So they never really had great examples to go off of. So when my parents were very young with 3 children, and they were trying to make a go of it on a shoestring budget with limited skills, unfortunately for them, they turned to alcohol, and that resulted in physical violence. And for us kids, we each found our role. Mine was always to be the mediator and try and break up the fight, but what 7 or 8-year-old can really break up 2 fighting grown adults who are alcoholic?
Right.
It's impossible. And so for me, the second job I had was to run out of the house to the nearest neighbors and to knock on the door as fast or loudly as I could to see if I could use their telephone. And the idea here is I had to wake up the neighbors to call the police because there was an issue in my house that needed attention. I was there to save my mom or my family. And that's the exact same thing that we've got going on in DC. We've got a fight going on in the House, and there are a group of people, millions of Americans, who are just not paying attention. So we're doing the exact same thing today. We're going door to door, but instead of knocking, we're banging on doors and telling folks, hey, there's a fire going on in our house.
Yeah.
You got to pay attention to it because, look, here are the damages that are going to be coming your way. And unfortunately, there is a saying in politics that goes, people don't change until they feel the pain.
Yep.
They don't change until they feel enough pain.
Yeah.
And it is so hard to get people to change before the pain hits. But, that's kind of the work that I do, is to communicate what the problems are in an effort to prevent people from having to experience it before we encourage the change from that point having to occur. So that's a little bit about how I grew up. and where the mission comes from and the call to action, wake up the neighbors, comes from. But
Wow.
that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, it's time to wake up. Time to
Time to
wake
wake
up.
up the neighbors. Yeah.
Wow, that is such a great analogy that could only come from a life experience, right? First, we've got Nebraska. Of course, you're traveling. And even though I do think that let me just make sure I'm reading it correctly here. The Swole Patrol is very much important to talk about. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to the Swole Patrols. That's Sergeant. We'll come back to the Swole Patrol afterwards. But
I'm still there. I still got it. It's
okay,
just buried
okay.
under a sweater right now.
Yeah, mine is buried under fat, but it's still there somewhere. So I want to get to Missouri. We'll go from California. How do you get to Missouri? What are you fighting for there as an attorney? Let's take that to jump off into these issues. What you plan to do for that state? Why it matters to you? Why they should believe you?
Right. So, okay. So, like I said, I wanted to go to California for law school. I didn't know if that was going to be my permanent home ever. I wasn't sure. And before I left, I had already had a relationship with somebody here in Missouri. So we were already dating long distance. And because I'm a glutton for pain and punishment, I decided to do law school in a rapid pace. So normally it's a 3-year program, but I did an accelerated 2-year law
Oh my
program.
gosh.
So I earned my law degree in 2 years,
Jesus.
and it was tough. I cried for the first 6 months straight. It was every night,
Yeah,
tears.
can
Um,
imagine.
Barely any sleep, but it was totally worth it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was the best education of my life. But what brought me back to Missouri was because I was in love, and I also love Missouri. This is so much like my own home state, and to be quite honest, like California is good. They've got a lot going on. They've got issues, but even in the city of Los Angeles, they're good. With Mayor Karen Bass and with some of the elected officials already there, like Representative Jimmy Gomez, he's there in Los Angeles, and candidate running for Congress right now, his name is Jake Rakove. He and I have formed a coalition with Elijah Manley as well. I know that they've got some strength out there representing Los Angeles, and I'm confident that Jake will do a great job if he's elected into Congress. So for me, coming home to Missouri, it felt like the right answer because here in our home state, it used to be a purple state. And now
Mhm.
we're living with a Republican supermajority in our home state. Here's an example of why supermajorities, regardless of party, supermajorities are bad. This last year in November, we voted to preserve paid overtime and paid sick leave through a ballot measure. We also voted as a state for women's reproductive access, and both passed. This last session, the Republican supermajority overturned the will of the voter on both of these.
Jesus.
Both of them. So
That
now there is no more paid sick leave. There is no more paid overtime in the state of Missouri. And we just had that ballot measure voted on and approved November 2024.
um
Same for reproductive access for women. It was a constitutional amendment, so there is a different process, but essentially it will be done again under this Republican supermajority in our state, that the will of the voter will be undone. And that's why it's so terrible. So that's why it's essential for strong-willed people, Democrats with a spine like myself, who are tired of the stagnation and tired of the quiet coming from the congressional leaders and even state and local leaders. I see the acquiescence and the complacency to the Republican right, and I just don't believe in that.
what is their freaking excuse for that? We're getting very close. I'm holding the cussing tongue, sir. We're getting very close as I start to hear this type of a story. What is their excuse to say everybody voted for this? Everybody in your state voted for this.
Yeah.
What's their excuse to give them when they go back on the campaign trail and say, yeah, we know you voted for this. I voted against it, but vote for me again anyway. How are they getting away with that?
This is going to make you angry.
All right, let's do it.
So we have direct democracy in this state. It's one of very few states that actually still has it. And basically it means that any constituent here in the state of Missouri can propose a ballot measure. And if you get enough signatures, it will be on the ballot in the language that you wrote it in.
Right.
That's what we have as direct democracy.
Straight up
Now,
white stone,
under
black stone. Got you.
right now under SB 22, the legislature gets to change your wording. So they can, yeah. So the legislature under SB 22 gets 3 attempts to change your wording before it's put onto the ballot. So that's one way they're suppressing the vote or the voters' initiative. The second is they said it this way. The voter didn't understand what they were voting for. So we have to overturn the will so that because we understand better than the voter. We, the Republican supermajority, know what they actually want to vote for. So we have to overturn it because that's what they actually want.
How the hell do you get away with that? You, you are an attorney there, and you're working to do what as an attorney? What are you working to do there?
So here in the state of Missouri, what I'm doing now, as I'm running for Congress, we can only look at federal issues if we want to. But for me, that's only a half-ass answer. For me, what I have to do is not only form a coalition at the federal level, like I am with Jake and Elijah, and we're bringing in several others. We just haven't officially brought them in yet and gotten their buy-in and support yet. But we are talking to several others, but also local officials. So we've talked to Missouri State House reps and state senators already. So the coalition is better than just, or more than just the federal level, it's the state level. We're also talking to local and municipal level leaders and elected officials and bringing them into the coalition. And what we're calling this group is Purple Power 2030. And so what I need Democrats, all these young Democrats who are running in red states to start thinking about is we got about 5 years, or not even 5 years anymore. You got 4 years and about 5 months to get it done. 4 years and 5 months to get your state as close to purple as you can before 2030. Because when 2030 hits, that's the next census.
Yes.
And after the next census rolls around, after it follows gerrymandering and
Of course.
redistricting. So for me, I'm focused on Purple Power 2030 in conjunction with running my own race, but also getting my home state to as close to purple as possible. That's something that you have not seen or heard any other federal elected talking about.
I was just going to say, of all the candidates I've asked that question of, it has been, and fair enough, it's the honest truth. They can only work on federal stuff. They're trying their hardest to get a consensus. That's the first time I've ever heard someone say, I have a plan. I'm trying to get a plan to fix that, right?
That flag right there. It comes from that service right there.
There it is.
It's because our minds are trained. We don't think in the short term. We think further than our noses. We think 5 to 10 years down the road.
And it's a necessity to think that way. Just doing things for right now will not work. And we've done many missions. There's missions all the time going on that you don't hear about, where it's the idea is how do we end this? How do we finish this? What's the long-term goal?
Well, if I may, I think
go ahead.
that's also the difference between veterans going into office and, people who didn't serve. If we look at a rack and stack comparison, the 1970s, our Congress was composed of 70% veterans. And during that time, they got anywhere from 600 to 700 pieces of legislation passed each session, year after year after year.
Wow.
Whereas today, it's just barely around 200 or slightly over. The last session, it was 226.
And how many of them were post office name changes?
Right. Very ceremonial, kind of like nothing things.
Yeah.
Which obviously we need more than that. There's so many people suffering in America today. The American dream has been bought and sold before we've had a chance to walk on the grass, for goodness sakes. We need real legislation happening. But I like to point out the 1970s sessions of Congress because they got the GI Bill passed, Endangered Species, Clean Air Act. They
Under
got
Nixon, for God's sake.
Right. Yeah. And it's because they knew exactly what we know as veterans how to do. Service before self.
Yep.
That's exactly it. How to put people and policy before personally held beliefs or your party. That's how you get it done.
Well, you're talking about waking up the neighbors. You said you wanted to make sure that they understand the detriment that we're in. Understand what is the actual issues that's going to affect them. What are they for Missouri? What, and I guess, we can start with the big, beautiful bill, but this has been happening. Obviously, gerrymandering has completely taken over your state, and I have another question about that. What are those? Tell the people in the 5th District of Missouri what's at stake, what's coming down the line. Wake them up.
Right. So, okay. So I think the biggest harm from the OBBBA, or the Only Billionaires Benefits Bill,
Mm-hmm.
is that let's look at healthcare first.
Oh, that's beautiful. Only
Healthcare it's going to be hard hit here in our state. We're looking at anywhere from 210 to 265,000 Americans will be losing their healthcare coverage.
Mm,
That's not an if, but a when that's going to happen. It's just a
facts.
matter of. And since so many healthcare facilities in our state, especially in our rural communities, rely on Medicaid to stay fully financed, we're expecting anywhere from 24 to 65 of those to close this year alone, or within the next year. With 24 to 65 rural clinics closing, what that means for the farm community and rural community is that if you have one medical emergency and you have that one flight for life event, but you don't have healthcare coverage or adequate coverage,
Mm-hmm.
that one medical bill may be the thing that causes you to go into foreclosure or bankrupt your entire farm. So we
Jesus.
can't let those
Yeah.
things happen. That's why these things are so important for healthcare. Medicare changes are just as cruel. It slashes Medicare support for low-income seniors by $490 billion nationally. Let's see. In education costs, under this new bill, it forces work requirements that are different. So if you're receiving a Pell Grant, for example, it requires you to work. It requires you to take 30 credit hours at a time. So if you're a working parent,
Shit.
how do you take 30 credit hours at a time to keep your Pell Grant?
That's some bullshit.
Exactly
And I
that.
keep on hearing more. Like I do this for a living, and we're actually writing a list. And the reason why we haven't been able to put the list up yet is because we can't find a stopping point. Like the list is something that we're gonna have scrolling at the end of all of my videos, whether it's something funny like a FAFO video or actual news. It's just gonna always be there to remind people that, hey, when they try to
Right.
blame you, when they try to blame Democrats in 2028, when it's time to vote again for another president, when they try to blame Democrats in 2026, when it's time to vote for Jordan, right?
Right.
And it just so happens that the one really bad thing that is supposed to happen from it in your state just so happened to happen right before the 2026 election, so they can say, look at what the Democrats are doing. Do you want
Right.
more of this? Right?
Exactly that.
We can't finish the scroll. We can't finish the list. We just can't. And that's another new one that I hadn't heard, the Pell Grants. But
Yeah.
it comes down to, we have so much to talk about with your issues, but I can't get there because now we're talking about gerrymandering. None of it matters. None of it matters if you don't get rid of this gerrymandering. And Gavin Newsom, even though his dumbass decided, excuse me, even though this guy decided to bring on Charlie Kirk and throw LGBTQ people under the bus for God knows what, because Democrats can't seem to realize that if they fight for people instead of trying to get the other side on their side, they have a better chance of getting the rest of us off the couch who
Right.
stayed home. But anyway, he had a good idea. He said, fine, if Texas is going to draw up new districts before the census, and the census is what you're aiming for, kudos to you. Are you willing to talk to your other neighbors, your blue state neighbors, these people who you're building a coalition with, and say, look, I'm okay with you doing as much gerrymandering as it takes to force us to stop. I'm to make it equal. If we know that there are, like in Mississippi, entire counties with 65% black people, right?
Right.
And only like 10% of them are represented. Until that number changes, I'll tell you what, Connecticut and Maine and whatever else, you guys, I need you to draw up the different. It may seem
Okay.
wrong. I don't think it's wrong. I think it's called fighting back. What do you think about an idea like that, getting a coalition like that?
Yeah, so I think in a state like Missouri, where there is a Republican supermajority, and they've been very transparent about throwing out the rule book and playing by their own sets of rules,
Hmm.
and we as Democrats have to understand, okay, if there is no sense of traditional rule playing, then yeah, we have to embrace our own set of rules and say, yeah, we need to redraw the districts here in our own state, because let's look at it this way. We're a 60-40 split state, which means 60% Republican, 40% Democrat. So we are a red majority state as it currently sits. But we, as congressional offices, we have 8 seats in the state, and we only hold 2 as Democrats.
Yeah.
So it's a 2-6 split. That's not 60-40.
Right.
That's a product of gerrymandering. We don't hold a single statewide office. That's a product of gerrymandering.
Okay.
So yeah, I do think we do have to redraw the map prior to, and we have to start being more forceful and demanding what we want and what we need, especially in states like this where it's just, we know we're not going to get to play by the rules fairly with this Republican supermajority. So for me, I've been very clear about this with Democrats up and down the ticket, doesn't matter the race. If you think that you're going to win your race with rose-colored glasses on and everything's just going to be PC and civil, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
If you think that you're going to win your race by playing with the same traditional rule book that you've always been playing, I'm here to tell you the other side has already gotten a copy of that playbook. They've mastered the plays, they've known how to beat those plays, and you will lose.
Yep.
That's the truth. And here's the other thing. For Democrats, if we keep doing things the way we've always done things and voting the way we've always been voting, yet we're expecting a different result, what does that sound like to you?
Absolute insanity.
Exactly that.
Absolute insanity.
And we are not that party. We are not a party of insane people. We can think better than this. We can vote smarter than this.
You know what kills me? Every time the Republicans want to get something done, they find some obscure rule that has never been used before. Republicans bring up a rule never been used before to screw Americans once again, and I can never find that shit from a Democrat. In the midst of an authoritarian takeover, nobody can find an obscure rule to stop a damn thing. Not one.
I got one.
Give it to me.
All right. I studied intellectual property law. I'm a biomedical engineer background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Went into law school, studied intellectual property, and patent law is one of those. So under patent law, there's what's called the Bayh-Dole or Bayh-Dole Act. It's a patent law provision that says if you as a state university receives federal dollars, essentially anything that you come up with in terms of pharmaceuticals from that science that we as a federal agency helped you get to, we get to say a price in that product. Well, there isn't a single pharmaceutical company out here in the world today that hasn't profited from the science that's come from universities. And federal dollars also support pharmaceutical research and development. So why aren't we rewriting the Bayh-Dole Act that only limits this to federal universities and certain types of research facilities that use federal university dollars and incorporating it into all types of research and development facilities, including, and most importantly, pharmaceuticals and healthcare. This is a way in which we can take an existing law, update it and convert it and apply it so that way the American taxpayer becomes essentially a shareholder and has some say in the profit margin or price of the pharmaceutical that's being put out. This is a way that we can drop down drop down pharmaceutical costs.
Okay.
By doing exactly that, finding obscure laws and finding a way to be creative and update them for a way that is modern and can then be used as either revenue building or something like that.
So we need a procedural law next in order to get that passed, though, in the Republican Congress. How do you propose to get something like that looked at, passed, stubbornly adhered to, whatever we can do?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the challenge, right? Is getting it introduced into a committee and getting it out of committee and onto the floor. So I think for me, that's going to require a lot of work in terms of finding the right committee, first of all, that will allow for these sort of changes to be modified in. I think because there aren't a whole lot of patent lawyers in Congress right now. I don't think there are any. I have not done that research though, so don't quote me on that. But I don't think that there are any patent lawyers in Congress right now. I know that there are only 18% of veterans in Congress right now. So I can say though that from a biomedical engineering standpoint, from a engineering and inventor standpoint, I don't think there are many of those in Congress either. So why I'm saying this is I don't think that there just aren't congresspersons or congresswomen in office right now that think in the way that I do. But that's the point.
That's the point. Yeah.
Right. That's why we need diversity of thought and opinion in Congress. We don't just need attorneys. We need single parents. We need union leadership, union stewards in Congress. We need law enforcement officers. We need champions of rental unions. We need moms and dads who have just had it too difficult in America. Yeah, sure, we could use some corporate influence and voice there as well. But by and large, it needs to be representation of the people. And this is an example as to why. Because when you get these sort of voices that are not the common cut, you get these sort of ideas, you know. But if we're always going to be pushed on the outside, then we're basically fracturing off a whole bunch of education that we could have incorporated and had a better policy in the end.
Yeah. Wow, I'm loving this, man. I wanted to get really into the student loan reform. I want to hear your ideas there. I want to hear your ideas on the digital rights and privacy protection. So you promised me that you're going to come back at some point because we got to get into all of that before the primaries. But there's two things that
Yes,
I absolutely must get into, and I got a little pushback. I have to do it.
do it.
I'm reading from your website. Our future depends on strategic investment at home and a bold, steady presence abroad. Why? Why do we need to have this presence abroad? There are people who are going to say, I'm tired of policing the world. There are people who are going to say, fine, if we have bases abroad, we definitely want to make sure that they're being used wisely, people are being taken care of. But why is it a necessity anymore for us to be the military of the world, us to have this presence all over?
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. So if we do a little bit of a history download, World War One happens, and it's this massive catastrophe across the European continent, and it spills out a little bit further. World War Two is fundamentally worse. It spills out much, much further. And not only are there the millions who are killed underneath the Hitler and the German Third Reich. But then we also have Stalin and the 20 million people he kills in his own country. Not to mention everything that happens in the Asian theater and everything that happens in Italy underneath Mussolini. So World War II happens, right? And so we want to fix the problem by having a geopolitical presence of military, U.S. military, there in the Asian theater and in the European theater. Now, this was largely because after World War II, we said that Germany was no longer allowed to have a standing army, and Japan was no longer allowed to have a standing navy. I think our relationship with both of these host countries has become such that we can have real meaningful discussions about transitioning that role back to them and allowing them to have a more robust self-defense presence. However, I do think that it is our geopolitical presence and stability that is the most important thing. Because we haven't had multiple wars there since our presence there, or at least on a grand scale, that's the important lesson. So for
So,
me, oh, go ahead.
wait a minute. So we say Mussolini, we say there has been Stalin, there's been the H-Man, there has been all of these things, the World War, and we dare to fix our mouth to tell Germany and Japan that we don't know if they're ready, that maybe they're ready while we have trouble. While we have the
Yeah,
next authoritarian and our military is on every continent on the world. How would
right.
they feel about that? How do they feel that we have the next Mussolini? And not only do we have him, we have our equipment in their lands.
Right. No, I think that's a really great observation to have made. Because yeah, that's exactly the situation we're in now. Frankly, I think our prestige, if that's the right word, or
I get
however
it.
we were accepted prior.
Yeah.
A lot of that has faded. I think most host countries around the world have come to accept and know that we are a nation that is one that has some turnover. So I don't think that they're so concerned about this second presidency of Trump. There's a lot to be alarmed about, but I think they know that there are still some constraints on the president, and that's probably why they haven't asked for us to leave their nations. They also benefit greatly. So, for example, in
True.
Germany, they profit from about $2.5 billion to their economy by our presence alone. So that's, just politically part of the reason why we're probably still there. What I'm arguing for, though, is a decrease in the numbers in the European and Asian theater and an increase in our Central American theater of operations. The reason why is because currently we let our immigration and drug trafficking issues arrive at our doorstep before we start to take them seriously.
Yep.
For me, the more humanitarian approach is to go to Central America, build up that economic stability, build up that political stability, and do right-sized missions. That doesn't necessarily mean permanent large-scale bases. It means right-sized. So that's drug interdiction forces. That might be rapid response teams going out and doing drug interdiction, much like our Coast Guard does around our country today. That could also mean immigration relocation efforts. Why we're allowing, so many folks to travel thousands of miles before we take care of them. It seems better for us, in my opinion, to set up humanitarian relocation facilities in Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, Belize, or El Salvador, rather than allowing them to traverse all through Mexico, get to our border, only for us to turn them away and send them back home. If we build up that relationship there in Central America, we can divorce ourselves from the Asian market, move our manufacturing over to the Central and South American markets. Manufacturing will still be cheaper. Logistics will be cheaper, so we don't have to ship and fly everything from the Asian market. It will be safer because we don't have to worry so much about our technology being stolen as we do under the Asian markets. But also it improves our security and national security and stability because we will not be having this massive immigration issue. A lot of the immigrant refugees that are coming here because in their host country, girls don't have the ability to be educated. In Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, that's not a thing for them. Young girls cannot get an education there. Food and healthcare access is not possible in those nations. And so what I've been very clear with dads and moms is to say, if you know your daughter is not going to be educated and she will be poor her entire life, and you know this, how many miles are you willing to walk for her to just learn how to read and write her own name?
As many as it takes.
That's the answer I hear most often.
Um,
Thousands, even.
here's the problem.
Yes, sir.
I won't water it down. Here's the problem. You personally, I trust in because of the story, because of what I read and see. I don't trust any politician once they get elected because they work for me at that point. And my job as a journalist is to not trust you and to only verify. But honestly speaking, as a human being, I can say, you know what? You have the right intention. The only problem is every time I've heard a similar argument were countries in Africa where instead of reading and learning history, they tried to impose a different leader who was better for capitalism and white history as opposed to their own. Every time I hear about that in Central America, it ends up being overthrowing democratically elected people, putting in dictators who are sympathetic to our capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I think that's what you want to do. And it's not even, honestly, you gave really good specific things to do. Intervention, drug intervention, emergency response type units, very specific things. I need to make sure that when this is presented, that it's not co-opted by the America that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. It's not really a question for you. It's more just a statement, a response to that. Yes, But if I was someone who lived in those countries and heard you say that, I would say, hold on, hombre. Not to be racist. I'm sorry. That was supposed to be a joke. Hold,
I
hold
didn't take it in any negative way.
hold on, family. I'm not sure I want you here for that. How about just stop sending your guns our way?
Yeah,
How about you fix your drug problem here, and it'll help us a lot.
right.
So anyway, I'll let you comment on that. I'll leave it there.
No, I think
We got a
that's
lot
a
to talk
very
about.
smart comment to make, and it's very intelligent to make because if I'm assuming you're drawing off of our history when you state that because if for folks out there on YouTube who may not be aware of our history, but all through the 70s and 80s, that was America's game plan through Central and South America was to remove who was in office and install our own leader who was cozy to America's way of thinking and believing. We did this through the 70s and the 80s. Reagan got in huge trouble for it. But a lot of the destabilization through Venezuela, Colombia, and these other nations is because we did exactly that. And so a lot of the immigration and a lot of the drug issues and the rampant violence that are happening in some of these Central American and South American nations is kind of because of us. We did this to these countries 40 or 50 years ago, and they still have not recovered.
We did it
Um,
to Iran, and we're trying to bomb them now. Anyway,
right, exactly. Yeah. So I think so we don't repeat the problems and the failures of the past. We have to be smart about our history. We
mhm.
have to know where it's come from. So we don't repeat the Nicaraguan arms crisis again. So we don't repeat arming militant people who are just there to commit terrorism against their nations, who will just lock their nations into more terrorism and more brutality in the end versus more freedom and democracy, which is what we should be fighting for.
Right.
But I think having an awareness of that history and knowledge will be the best benefit for those who are working on this goal. But you're exactly right to also have skepticism and worry, especially when it comes to America and her ability to exact harm and damage by use of its military power. But I
The
think,
Even
yeah,
more so than that, though, my friend, I think the idea is even if I had full confidence in it, the unilateral decision to do that is assuming that the people over there will also believe it, right?
right,
Like,
right.
right. So we may really actually this time want to do that. People
Absolutely.
over there
Yeah,
may say, F you, bro. Like, I don't want you here. And it's going to become something that you weren't expecting. And I think we've got to there's a lot to figure out before we talk about going anywhere to do anything. Um,
100%.
and we need to make sure, but this is just me, my little pushback, my thing. Because I
No, and
can't
I
let
agree with you too. We have to build the relationship first,
uh,
not just mandate it.
I'll say this though. I feel icky, very, very icky when I have a politician or a candidate on and I don't have a pushback. So I had to search real hard to find one because you, my friend, you, my friend, seem like so far the real
Yeah,
deal. I'm honored to have you on this platform. I want to have you again. There's a lot more very important things we've got to talk about. We've got, especially for Missouri, their education. I think Missouri is like not really up there at the top. It's
no,
not.
it's bad.
And you have a lot to say about that. We got a lot to say about this digital rights thing, especially in my space. Very important stuff.
Yes,
And I also just have to say this so that people know I'm on it. YouTube, we are working on trying to get a way around Medicaid, a way to help people through the people, especially with Aiden Swallow in Arizona, who she is coming up with an idea on almost a collective, on a way that's a charity rather than Medicaid, because as much as you want to wake the people up to the bad thing that's happening, there's some things you cannot turn back. And
right.
that only billionaires benefit bill. I'm using that. I'm using that, man.
Yeah, good, good.
I mean,
One thing that frustrates me more than anything
it's
else with
having to say
Democrats,
those words, those other
yes,
words.
quit talking like Trump, man.
Yeah.
Like so many Democrats sound exactly like that guy. I'm like, Man, I never won a court case. I never went into a courtroom with the opponent's language coming out of my mouth. I
Yes.
never did that. Yet you hear all these Democrats sounding exactly like Trump. This will make America great. Big ugly bill. It's too similar to what that man says. It's the only billionaires benefits bill, man. And when it was the OMBBB, I was calling it the only millionaires and billionaires benefits bill. Like, we just
Love
got to
it.
divorce ourselves from that orange fool.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it, and I will do that. I am coming out of this with that very specific knowledge in tow. And we're going to get on all of this. I want to get you to tell me if you're willing to do something like the plan I'm going to be presenting to you. It's very important you come back. It's very important you come back. I need you back. Tell me you're going to come back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come back. This was an awesome discussion, very engaging, and I appreciate the questions too. And feel free to push back because, one thing about me as a candidate is I don't believe in arrogance. You'll see that from a lot of politicians. I'll give an example. We went to KC Tenants this last week. I asked them to take a look at my website and give me their honest reviews. And they did. And there's nothing like radicalized young people to tell me their honest reviews. But we sat down and we worked with a group of them, and we got the language right. And that's how we're doing this thing correctly, is we're engaging with constituents, we're engaging with voters, and we're asking them, review us, roast us, give us critiques, but also with the intention that you're going to help us get it right in the end. And what that's done is it's opened up so many doors for us that otherwise might have stayed closed, because we're including people into the process. Young people are getting to see how this actually works and how we bring them in, and how their voices are really heard by their advocate. So I think for us, that's been the best part about this experience and how we're continuing to modify and improve. So yeah, definitely push back, because that just gives us a space that we can re-examine and say, okay, did we get the language wrong? Did we not communicate the idea correctly? Because everything is coming from a good place with the intention of doing more good. But there are some spots that, like the way you've pointed out today, I might not be thinking about a past harm that has occurred. And as much as I talk about trauma-informed legislation, which is what we desperately need in this country,
Yes, yes.
which I don't think you'll ever hear anyone else talk about.
My
I
friend,
think I
there's
might
at
have
least
coined
10
that
things
term.
I've heard you say that I have never heard anyone else talk about. And
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure
we've had like 5 or 6 already. There's only like there's only a few things that I've heard that other people have said. That's where we are on this.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
good to
good.
go,
Yeah,
brother.
but trauma-informed legislation is something that I champion. That's something I talk about. Now that's because I was a healthcare worker. I'm bringing my two disciplines together.
People, where can they find you? Where can they donate? Where can they help and volunteer?
Yeah, so my website is jordanjherrera.com. JORDAN, the letter J, and then HERRERA.com. And on my website are all of my social media links. But Herrera for Congress is basically the one that's on Facebook, Instagram, but on TikTok, I believe it's Herrera for Missouri. And
Okay.
I think on X, it might be Herrera for House.
That's it, man. Listen, it is a pleasure having you on here. It's an honor having you on here. This discussion was enlightening, fruitful, I think, for anyone who listens, especially me. And we'll be booking this again. I can't wait to see you in Congress. I can't wait to be a thorn in your backside, to push you to fight the way that I hear you fighting now. Um, and
I
that's
appreciate that.
I absolutely love it, man. You found a friend in me and this channel.
I appreciate it, Doug. And I am looking forward to coming back. And thank you so much for helping me to wake up the neighbors and bang down every door, because that's what it's going to take.
Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, And with solidarity, we pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind, the kind that moves. But here's the thing, none of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads. It's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works. Follow us on all these things you see here, and our link tree is in the description. Maybe even get some merch.
That was the Political Drain podcast, which can be heard on www.groovechillradio.com/political-drain and can be viewed on the Political Drain YouTube channel anytime. Once again, thank you for listening to Groove Chill as we resist fascism in any form, pursue democracy, peace, and love.